Hello, welcome back. You are in day 10 of Mule 4 in-depth training by Shiv Prasad. Today, we are going to understand about a very important topic called as object stores. Actually, in interviews or in certification exam, there are a lot of chances of questions from this topic. So please watch this video step by step. I will try to explain the concepts clearly with examples and through code. This is going to be a little bit longer video, but just understand. It will give a good insight about Mulesoft. Okay, so let us get started. I will actually give a requirement. Let's assume that I'm creating a flow. I have HTTP listener, and I can set a variable. So I'm setting a variable by firing a query on, let us say, database. The result of database I am storing in a variable. Okay, so forget about whether it is coming from database or not. Here, assume that I'm hard coding right now. Forget about database also. Let us assume that I'm hard coding a variable. I'm creating a variables using set variable transformer, or however, I'm setting a variable x equals to 1. Fine. Whenever I set a variable, actually, where is it set? I want you to visualize a Mule event. Actually, whenever we give a HTTP request, this listener, the inbound endpoint, is going to create a Mule event object. Mule event object contains Mule message, which contains attributes, payload. This data structure is nothing but Mule message. And also in Mule event, there will be vars, which is a map. We can store any key value pairs here inside this. Now, you know that whenever a HTTP request comes, this HTTP listener is going to create a Mule event. So if I get 10 requests from 10 clients, there are 10 individual requests. So HTTP listener will create 10 individual Mule events for 10 requests. So for 10 requests, there will be separate 10 Mule events that will go through the entire flow, right? When will a Mule event be destroyed? When you give the response back, when the response is given back, the Mule event also will be destroyed. So Mule event is created whenever a request comes. In this case, right, whenever response goes back. Now, suppose in this flow, if I have set a variable x equals to something I hard coded, it will be set inside Mule event. So what is the scope of this variable? It is scope to Mule event. What is the scope of this Mule event? That means until how long will it be available or will it be in memory? Once the response is given back, it will be destroyed, right? So I can say that scope of the variable is event scope. So once the response is given, the variable also will be destroyed. The value stored inside that also will be destroyed. Oh, that is how variables behave. But now what I want is, basically variables are also nothing but stored as key value pairs, right? Variable name, variable value. So basically what I want to do is, I want to store key value pairs at application level so that I can retrieve whenever I want, whether it is in a single flow or maybe inside another flow within the same application. I should be able to retrieve it, right? So basically, I need a store for creating key value pairs. Value can be any object as well. So Mulesoft provides us something called as object store. So what is this object store? You can think of object store as a map where you can store key and a value. You can think of object store as some container. No, don't think about containers in DevOps. You can just think of this as a data structure. You can think of object store as something where you can store key values. Keys will be strings and values can be any object. So how to store key value pairs inside this object store? Actually, where is this object store actually saved? The data inside object store, where is it saved? It depends. So let us see various cases. Okay. We are deploying our application inside a standalone Mule runtime. This is my standalone Mule runtime. Assume that I have deployed an application A and another application B. In application A, we are storing some data in object store. In application B also, we are storing some data in object store. Two different applications. So this object store can be treated like an object in memory. You can store key value pairs. That means object store can be of two types. One is in-memory object store, where all the key value pairs will be stored in memory within the application. Or it can be a persistent object store. If in application A, assume that we have configured a persistent object store, whatever key value pairs you are writing, they will be stored inside some temporary file system. Okay, I will show you where they are actually stored. Okay, so if the object store is configured as in memory, the data will be stored within the JVM's memory. Of course, you know, Mule is running inside a JVM, right? Inside JVM's heap memory, object store data will be stored. If you configure object store as persistent, then all the key value pairs will be stored in a temporary file system on your server machine, wherever standalone server is running. Let me demonstrate with an example. Assume that I'll tell you a simple scenario so that I can show you a demo of how to actually use object store. So actually, to store data in object store, there is a module called as object store module. So in that module, there are components. Store is a component using which you can store key value pairs. Retrieve is a component by using which you can retrieve the value of any key. I will show you through code. So now I want to develop a simple application to demonstrate the concepts. Once you understand the concepts, I will show you where practically, where in real-time scenarios this object store is really useful. But let us try to understand the concept first. So what I want is, I will actually create two flows within the same application. First flow will have a HTTP listener mapped to /store. Whenever request comes, I'm expecting a key value pair in query parameters. Whenever request is coming, I'm expecting query parameters. Key is equals to some key, ampersand, value is equals to what? Something. So what I want to do is, I want to use the store component of object store module to be configured such that it will store a comma 1 in the object store. As I said, I want you to visualize object store is something like, so a and 1 will be stored. Okay. Then I want a set payload component to just return a response saying that data is stored in object store. Okay. Now in another flow, I will actually configure HTTP and let it be mapped to /retrieve. And then I will use retrieve component of object store. Okay, so here, whenever request is coming, I'm expecting a query parameter key is equals to what? Suppose if the pass key is equals to A, then retrieve component should retrieve the value of A from this object store and set as payload. Then I just wanted to retrieve flows, and I'll show you how to use this store and retrieve, how the data will be saved, etc. Everything I will show you practically. Just follow. So I'm creating a new project, Mule project, object store, finish. Okay. Then, as I told you, I will drag and drop HTTP listener, and I'll rename this flow as store flow, and I'll configure this HTTP listener. Again, the good practice is to configure globals.xml, but right now I'll just create a listener here itself to save time. /store, I'm giving the path. Then I will add a module. Click on add modules. Do you see a module called as object store here? Yes, I will add this module. Do you see a component store here? Yes. So I'll drag and drop. So here it is asking for key and a value. So key, I'm expecting from a query parameter called as key. So you know the expression how to retrieve a query parameter. Attributes dot query params dot key. Can be anything, but here I'm using words key and value. And value should be attributes dot query params dot value. Okay, that's all. And I will actually drag and drop set payload and just set a payload, key or data stored in object store. That's it. Now I will drag one more flow. I will rename this flow as retrieve flow. And here I will use, this listener will use same port, but path is /retrieve. Okay, then I will use a retrieve component of object store module. Then I will use a key. Here, what is the key expected? Query parameter key. So I want to retrieve the value of this query parameter. Attributes dot query params dot key. Whatever I'm expecting. So it will retrieve the value of this key. But it is possible that in object store, there might not be any such key. Suppose if a request comes, key is equals to B. Right now in object store, there is no such key called as B. So whenever you try to retrieve the value of B, you may get a null. Normally, whenever we are retrieving, if it is not able to retrieve the value for this key, it will return null. But we will give a default value. Okay. So I can give anything as a default value. I can even give a dynamic expression as well. But here I'll hard code no such key, just a string. Okay. It can be any expression as well. That's all. Now I configured these two flows. Let me run this application. Then I will try to give a request. First of all, I'll prepare this URL localhost 8081/store. I want to store. Key is equals to A, and just I'll give value is equals to 1. Okay. Let us see if it is started. Yep, the Mule runtime is still starting. I'll wait for a few seconds. Okay, deployed. So now if I give a request to /store, yes, it is saying data stored in object store. I want to store one more key value pair B, and value is 2. Again, data is stored. Now I want to retrieve. So localhost 8081/retrieve key is equals to A. See, did I get value 1? That's what I stored. Key is equals to B. I got value 2. Key is equals to C, which is not existing as of now. No such key. So it is working. Now, store is a different request. Retrieve is a different request. I'm able to retrieve the key value pairs in different requests. So I can say that the object store is at an application level. Okay. But now, what if I stop the server? If I stop the server, if the object store is in memory, as I told you, there are two types, right? If the object store is in memory, the data should have been lost. If it was persistent, then even after restart, I should be able to get the values for those keys. Let us see, I stopped the server and now I'm running it again. Let us wait until it gets redeployed. Yep, deployed. Now let me give a request to retrieve the value of key A. Will I get it? Oh, I got it even after restart. So that means by default, the object store, whatever I'm using, is persistent. But where is the temporary file? I told you that it will store the key value pairs in temporary file system. Where is it? Let me tell you. Actually, once I ran it, hey, in AnyPoint Studio, do you see that Mule home is set to this directory? Inside AnyPoint Studio, plugins, and this is the home directory of the Mule runtime, which is used inside Studio. I will go there. Okay, this is a Mule runtime. Do you see that there is a .mule folder inside Mule runtime? Yes. Here, do you see that there is a folder with same as my project name? My project name or application name is object store demo. Is it there? Yes. Inside that, you can see there's a folder called as object store. Inside that, you will see lot of subfolders. These are actually called as something called as partitions. Actually, inside .mule folder, inside my application folder, inside that object store folder, data will be stored in some temporary folders here somewhere. You can see, maybe you can see inside one of the folders, you can see there is .obj. Somewhere it will be stored. So I want you to understand that if your object store is persistent and if you are running on premise, if you are using a standalone runtime, under Mule home directory, there will be .mule folder. Under this, there will be a folder with same name as application. Under this object store folder, you can see the data will be stored. Fine. Now you may ask me, hey, what if this folder is deleted? Yes, let me try to do it. I will stop the server first. Then what I'll do is I'll go to this .mule folder and delete everything right now. Okay. Now the data present in object store, the temporary file system is deleted. Now I am restarting this. So after it restarts, let us see, in this .mule folder, automatically the application folder and all should be again created. Let me just wait. Okay, the server is starting right now. See, slowly under .mule folder, these subfolders will be created. Just wait. hey, there's a project, there's a folder object store demo, it got recreated. Previously it was deleted and then now recreated. Fine, let it start. Yeah, deployed. Now, as this folder was recreated, the previous data should have been lost. If I try to retrieve the value of this key, no such key, because the object store data was deleted. So now you understood clearly that if object store is persistent, then the data will be stored in temporary file system. Now you might ask me, hey, how do I create a in-memory object store? Let us see how to create a in-memory object store. Okay, let me stop this right now. Actually, for this store component, if you see at the bottom, there is something called as object store configuration. So I can click on plus and configure object store configuration. Okay, now I can give name to my object store. I can configure this. Let us say I'll give a name as my object store. Okay, here there's a checkbox persistent. If I uncheck it, that means this object store is in memory. And there are a lot of other configurations I will tell you. Okay, I'll just click on OK right now. I deselected. This is nothing but a in-memory object store right now. Okay, so now I configured my store to point to my own object store. You can see this is my object store which I created. Similarly, the retrieve component also, I can make it to point to this object store. Earlier, I didn't configure my own object store configuration, right? That means if you don't configure any object store configuration, Mule runtime level, for every application, there will be a default object store. And remember this for interview purpose or for certification purpose. The default object store, which is actually created by Mule runtime, that is a persistent object store. That is the reason why earlier, when I didn't configure my own object store, even if I restarted, you saw that the values were there, right? So now I configured my own object store, and my own object store, I made it as in memory. I unchecked this persistent. Okay. So now let us see the behavior. I will run it right now freshly. Okay. The application is deployed. Now freshly what I will do is I'll store a key value pair. I'll give a request to /store. Let's see, I'll give the value of A as 1. And here's A1 I gave, fine. Or even if I give a request again as 1, the value will be overwritten, okay? Fine. Again, I'll give B and the value is 2. Fine. So 2 key value pairs. Now if I try to retrieve the value of A, 1, because it is in memory and my application is still running. Now let me stop and restart. As I configured my object store to be in memory, the data should have been lost after restart. Let us see. Okay, so the application got deployed now. Let us see. I'll give a request to retrieve the value of key A. No such key because it was in memory and it was deleted. Fine. Now, let me tell you about this configuration here. When I make object store as in memory, there might be some problems. As everything is stored in memory, if you store a lot of key value pairs and if the values are bigger values, you may get out of memory because everything is stored in memory, right? So especially when you configure object store as in memory, you can configure what are the maximum number of entries that can be stored in object store. Suppose if I say 100, only 100 key value pairs will be stored in object store. If you try to store 101 element, the previous data in object store might get removed. The previous, maybe the first entry or second entry, that might be removed. Okay. So maximum entries is very important whenever you are using object store to make sure that you will not get out of memory. You have to configure what are the maximum entries in object store. Fine. What is the time to live? Time to live is, suppose in object store you added an entry key value pair, and if that key value pair is not being retrieved for, let us say, 5 minutes or 1 minute, you don't want it to be lying in memory. You want it to be removed from object store. So you can configure the time to live, TTL, time to live. Suppose if I say 60 and the unit is 60 seconds, that means if a entry in object store is lying there without being retrieved or without being used for 60 seconds, it will be evicted. It should be evicted from the object store. And what is this expiration interval? So every key object store, whatever data we store inside it, once it is created, after every 1 hour, I want it to expire. That means all the entries, all the key value pairs in this object store should expire after every 1 hour. Like that, we can configure this object store. This makes sense mostly when you are having a in-memory object store. Okay, so that is the configuration. Fine. Now, I want to actually go with defaults. I'll cancel this. And now I want to make this as persistent object store. Fine. And I will restart it. Okay. So I made my object store also as persistent. Then let me restart it. Actually, what I wanted you to understand is inside .mule folder, the key value pairs will be stored. So even after restart, if I configure my object store as persistent, even after restart, the data will not be deleted. That's good for production, but whenever I am doing development, I'm testing for multiple scenarios, right? So what I might want to do is whenever I'm restarting my server, after doing some code changes, whenever I'm restarting my server, what I want is I want the data in persistent object store to be deleted. So what I can do, I can actually go to this .mule folder and delete this object store demo folder. So whatever data is there in persistent object store will be removed, and maybe I can do my testing. But again, it is really painful. I have to find out the Mule home directory, go there and manually delete it. Oh, why can't it be automatically deleted through Studio itself whenever I am running? So what I can do, this is very important, please listen. We need to do it during development. Actually, while deploying, there's an option to tell to Anypoint Studio to delete any persistent object store. So what I can do, right click, run as. Normally we select run as Mule application, but we have to select run as Mule application configure. And if I come down here, there is an option, clear application data. By default, it is never. So the application data present inside .mule folder will never be deleted. But during development, I want Anypoint Studio to prompt me whether to delete or not, then I will decide. So I selected prompt, apply, and run now. Let us see now, whenever I am restarting, it should prompt me now. Yes, see, it is prompting me. Do you want to clear application data? Yes. If I say yes, this folder should be deleted and recreated. Okay, let us check. I said yes. See, it got deleted. And during deployment, again, it will be recreated. So in any point studio, whenever you are developing and testing, so during redeployment, you want the previous data to be removed, the previous persistent data to be removed. So you can configure it, right? So in this lecture till now, you understood how we can actually store key value pairs in object store using store and how to retrieve. There are other components also like retrieve all. If I just drag and drop retrieve all instead of retrieve, see what is this retrieve doing? It is retrieving only value of a given key. But retrieve all means it will retrieve all key value pairs. See, retrieve all key value pairs in object store. Retrieve all keys will give you only all keys. Remove will actually remove a key. If you give a key, it will remove. Clear means the entire object store will be cleared. So by seeing the names itself, you can understand what these are doing. Okay. So now let me tell you one important thing. What if I deploy this in cloudhub? That's a very important interview question. How object stores behave in cloudhub? So actually, if I deploy to cloudhub, as we understood about cloudhub, whenever I deploy my application, a virtual machine will be created on AWS, and inside that our application will be running. The key value pairs will be stored in this machine only. The key value pairs, if the object store is persistent, the key value pairs also will be stored in the temporary file system of this virtual machine only. Now, what if this application gets restarted? The VM will be destroyed. A new virtual machine will be created and application will start here. But what about this object store data which was persistent? This is lost, is it? Yes. So there is a problem in Cloud Hub. So what will happen actually in Cloud Hub? Let me tell you. In Cloud Hub, whenever you deploy your application, there is an option which we have to select. So actually on Cloud Hub, the data will not be stored in the temporary file system of this VM. Actually, in any point platform, there are a lot of REST APIs. Let me go to Google and search for any point platform developer portal. Here, this will take me to the developer portal, this link. I'll go to developer portal. Oh, not this, sorry. I think, yes, this is the developer portal URL. No. Okay, sorry, this is not the one. Any point platform developer portal. Let me again just check. Public portal I'll select. Here, I guess, here is a link to developer portal or public portal. This is a URL. Now, you can see that in public portal, this is the Mulesoft developer public portal. There are a lot of REST APIs. There are a lot of REST APIs. And there is one REST API called as Object Store Service V2. This is a REST API, Object Store Service V2. Actually, inside AnyPoint platform, on the AnyPoint platform cloud, there is one service running called as object store service V2. V2 stands for version 2. Actually, in Mule 4, we use V2. When in Mule 3, in earlier version of Mule 3, there was V1 as well. But in Mule 4, remember that we use only V2. V1 cannot be used with Mule 4. So in interviews, they may ask, what is the difference between V1 and V2? Object Store Service V1 and V2. The difference is in Mule 4, Object Store V2 is only configured. Okay. So there is a service running Object Store Service V2. Yeah. So fine. Now, actually, in your application, if you are using Object Store component, whatever data we are actually storing in Object Store, that will be sent to this REST API. This REST API internally will store the data. So on cloudhub, if you are storing some data in Object Store or retrieving some data in Object Store, the Mule runtime will internally make calls to this REST API and then store the data or retrieve the data. So the data, whatever is stored, is external to the virtual machine. So even if the virtual machine crashes and if the application is restarted, no problem. Again, this will fetch from the Object Store Service V2. So remember, whenever you are deploying your application only on cloudhub, you need to make sure, you need to understand that the data is stored in Object Store Service V2. Okay. Now, let me actually show you by actually log into my AnyPoint platform, anypoint.mulesoft.com. I'll try to log in. Actually, while deploying, I'll go to Runtime Manager. You need to understand this thing. While deploying any application, see, I can select to deploy to cloudhub. Now, there's an option here, use Object Store V2. This has to be selected whenever you are deploying to cloudhub. Then only, if you are using any Object Store connector or any component, if it is trying to store key value pairs in Object Store, if you select this use Object Store V2, then only the data will be stored in Object Store V2. Otherwise, by default, it will behave like in-memory Object Store. Okay, that is very important for a certification exam or interview. If you don't select it, that means even though in your code you have configured the Object Store as persistent, it will behave as in-memory Object Store. Okay. So there is a documentation actually. This is, I just Googled for Object Store in cloudhub. And here is the first link which comes up with an explanation of different types of Object Store explained here. In this document, I highly recommend all of you to go through this URL. Just search for Object Store in cloudhub and take this URL, different types of Object Store. Here is a documentation which is explaining 3 types of Object Store. AnyPoint Object Store V2, this is the one which we use in Mule 4. V1 was called as cloudhub Object Store V1. This is the one which is used in Mule 3. And for on-premise systems, they call it as Mule Object Store. Whatever I explained about Object Store V2, right? And actually, importantly, I want you to understand that whenever you are using Object Store V2, the default TTL is 30 days. Hey, when you are configuring your own Object Store, in the global element, let me show you. Here, do you remember I told you about TTL, expiration interval and all? When you are deploying to cloudhub, the values, whatever you configured, will be ignored. The time to live is 30 days and extended by 30 days if accessed. This is actually according to the documentation, right? So some Mule runtimes have ability to configure custom time to live period. So there is some documentation if you want to customize it. But if you are using defaults in Object Store V2, these are the limits, right? And remember, the max value size in Object Store V2 is 10 MB. Okay, so I highly recommend you to go through the limitations. It is saying distributed locking capability is not available in cloudhub. That means if you have deployed your application on multiple workers and if you're getting highly concurrent requests, right? If two requests are trying to change the value of same key, right? Normally for concurrency, we use something called as locking. Remember, for Object Store V2, distributed locking capability is not available. I highly recommend you to go through this explanation about Object Store V1, Mule Object Store, etc. Right? So please, after watching this video, please go through it. Okay. So in my next lecture, I'll explain you the practical uses of Object Store. Right now, you just understood how Object Store works in various scenarios in on-premise and on CloudHub. But in my next lecture, you will see how practically Object Store is used in various scenarios. But that is also very important. So watch the next video and understand it. So in the next video, once you complete, I'll give you the exercises to be done. That's all. I'll see you in next lecture.